Well, we've heard some examples of questions that patients and patient groups have. We've looked at how they are hoping to take some of their ideas forward. It sounds hard, and I appreciate that. They're trying to work out what help do we need, what mentorship do we need, what are our questions. It's hard. But we want to make sure that you understand that it's possible. And James and Duncan today are going to demonstrate James's patient-led, patient-driven idea and how they've worked together with others to make theirs a reality. Over to you.
Brilliant, thank you. Hi everyone. Yes, we're doing a live demonstration today, so be warned. Can't promise anything.
What could go wrong? 17
hours into a fast, have an 8-week-old baby at home, and there was something else, but I can't even remember. Oh, I left at 5 a.m. this morning, so if I do collapse on stage, apologies, but at least we're in the right room with the people. And there was a giant bright light on my face, but luckily that's not anymore, so we're all okay. I'm James from Keep Me Breathing. I will endeavour to speak quickly. I know it is break time soon. And, sorry, Duncan, thank you.
Do you want me to? Yeah,
Here's our 30-second elevator pitch for anyone in the room. What we're demonstrating is mechanical, but we're always aware that from a pharmaceutical point of view, actually CCHS, Congenital Central Hypoventilation Syndrome, is actually very suitable. 5,000 patients will fit into an AAV gene therapy as a candidate. So if Alexion, you're in the room anywhere, come speak to me after, please. And then there's also some brilliant clinicians around as well, and every hospital, the specialist hospitals across Europe, UK and US are all very linked up and ready for a clinical trial. So whether on drug repurposing or gene therapy, please come speak to me as well. Now, if you don't mind just flicking one more, Duncan. Again, I'm here, same reason as most people probably today. We have our son, Casper, and Casper stops breathing the moment he falls asleep. He also has various other conditions, including hyperinsulinism, actually. But we've sort of gone from the top here, from first born as a baby, with his big brother Max, all the way around here to going to Portugal, Spain, Australia, Las Vegas. Didn't win on the slots. Otherwise, we wouldn't need all the funding that we need. And then we've got, as I say, our new baby, Rafaela, who was born 8 weeks ago. So we're very positive in the way we try and present everything, mainly because of everything that probably, like you guys were told, we wouldn't do. So if you don't mind flicking forward, Duncan. On the left-hand side, given the diagnosis, no hope, no travelling in the car even alone together, let alone flying to Australia. It's a bit of a problem when someone doesn't breathe when they fall asleep. He also doesn't recognise any changes to oxygen or air pressure levels. So again, whereas we all would just simply sit with lower oxygen on a plane, he requires his ventilator. And Duncan, if you don't mind flicking back one slide, sorry. You'll see there when he's asleep on the beach, but also up there on the plane when he needs his ventilator because he doesn't adjust. So we have a lot of luggage is how I would describe it. And when we were given that diagnosis, as I say, we were within a week, we decided we were going to do something. We just didn't know what. And here's a list of things we have done, but actually, feel free to take a photo because it's interesting the advice we were given by one hospital, and once we moved to a hospital that was specialist in the condition, the difference it made was tremendous. But one of my main, I guess, like if I was trying to pass on any advice as to how Vento, which is what I'll be demonstrating in a moment, came about, is find the right people and harass politely the right people. So Duncan, yeah, if you don't mind flicking over, here's two really good examples. So the geneticist who gave us our diagnosis, Alex Deng, he actually leads the UK AI genomic rollout now. But I politely harassed him ever from our first meeting, and then he's gone on to do numerous media appearances for us. He's a member of our advisory board. We're actually friends now, and that's us all on Brighton Beach with our families there meeting up earlier this year. He delivered us literally the contact into our advisory board, who they form now. And again, that photo there is the advisory board in London a year and a half or so ago. And then on a friends aspect, we asked our nursery in terms of if we could essentially get in touch with all of the parents to ask if they knew anybody. Somebody knew a journalist, that's him top right. We got in the Times paper, which was here. It's Chris Hancock, who is left here, very nice guy, got in touch with us, wanted to have dinner, introduced us to Andrew Pacey, who then introduced us to Duncan here. So it really, eventually comes around. And what we wanted to do is me and Alex, the geneticist, went on and created a 6-month sort of almost crime map. And Duncan, if you don't mind flicking the stage, this is a very tiny part of it. And it's like those police walls where you have your stickers everywhere and try and work out what you're going to do. One of the central things that we wanted to do was look at how we can make a massive difference, i.e. change every kid who has CCHS life in under 5 years, because, again, it's horrendous how slow everything is. And it makes me fuming. And if I'm not back here in a couple of years, with Casper as a good example, I'm going to be even more fuming. So, we're aware we need to move fast. And actually, I really had to do a live demonstration today because I promised we would do this last year at a Beacon event, which I think Sean from Champ 1 was here. So, Sean, I'm actually doing it when I said I would last year. So, we needed to do that. So this is an example. And what we decided was something mechanical that could actually do it rather than, say, new drug development. But as I say, drug repurposing and things are still very much on the table. So here's our 3 phases. So that crime map, so to speak, turned out, and we needed to build an adaptive respiratory modulation interface. This is essentially that for CCHS. So children, adults, babies born with born with CCHS do not sense any changes to their CO2 levels in the room. And when we hold our breath, it's the CO2 buildup in our bodies which makes us breathe, as opposed to lack of SpO2. And so therefore they don't breathe anymore. What this is doing, and I'm hoping, should we have a look and see how it's doing, or should we do it
We'll save it to the end. Yeah.
Fine, we'll save it to the end. This is monitoring my CO2 the whole time now we're speaking. I originally said to Joe about doing it on an exercise bike. I think that really was a good idea not to do, especially given what I said earlier. But you would be able to see essentially how my CO2 level is changing, and then actually watch at how I'm breathing differently in order to bring my CO2 levels down as I exercise. And this essentially is now fully functioning. It's passed over 100 feasibility tests. I say fully functioning again, we still have issues, but we're working through it. And this is, as I say, phase 1 of our 3-phase system to eventually implant a breathing pacemaker, where this device, in a much smaller form, will communicate with something on the inside to trigger, like a cardiac pacemaker triggers, when your heart misses a beat, when you miss a breath, it will trigger your phrenic nerve to do that. And so this is what this should look like in sometime in the next 12 months, because we're actively going out for investment for what we call Vento. Serendipitously, Vento is also potentially really useful for high-level athletes and potentially in the construction industry if you're working down in tunnels all day, because what our device uniquely does is not only senses what's happening on the inside of my body, but actually senses what's happening out here, so we can tell the CO2 levels if the device is working today, which fingers crossed it will be. But also for higher level cyclists, things like that, measuring your CO2 endpoints, seeing actually how quickly you return to your baseline. That's actually missing from the whole of sport, for example, at the moment. Measuring how often a worker is constantly exposed to CO2, but also how their body's responding to it. If, say, they're working in tunnels or you're building Neom City in Saudi, that, again, is something that doesn't currently exist. So my background is, as an entrepreneur, I've always run my own companies, and so this is actually almost coming back round into what we originally wanted to achieve. And with Vento funding, we aim to actually, for me, not to have to keep running marathons, which we have done to date. And actually, if this can help us to do that, then it will accelerate everything else that we're doing, again, because we know the pace, especially in the rare disease world, is so painstakingly slow. And again, these are just a couple of slides from our pitch decks that we sent to people. And in a moment, you'll see we actually also, yes, thank you. We actually also have Vento with an offer from a US-based investor, which would, let's say, value Vento a multi-million-dollar company in itself. So again, we're in the formation of that. What else have we achieved? Again, not to blow on trumpet, but again, to sort of share what we've managed to do. And we hold, the world's largest formally signed mandate for a single rare disease strategy. And that's only because in rare disease, it doesn't exist, but it's a lovely marketing term and people don't typically do it. So the fact that we have 150 doctors, scientists and engineers actually makes us stand out as unique and gives us something which we can use to help raise funds. And essentially we act like a business. So everything we do is what's the ROI? We have CCHS awareness groups in the UK. We don't focus on that. We spend all of our money solely on research, treatment and development. And Vento is the first part of that. And as I say, that's where Duncan's been working the last year or so. And I think I have one more slide and we'll be over to Duncan. Yeah, so I was saying about the offer from a US-based investor and what we want to do with that. And then lastly, this is just a quote we got only last week, so I thought I'd stick it on, from the business secretary, Peter Kyle, who also luckily is my local MP, so I have been politely harassing him for the last year as well. But yeah, so that's where we are today. That's what we plan to do. And Duncan's going to talk a bit about how we actually did it, and also hopefully show you what my live CO2 readings have been this entire time.
Thank you.
And I'll do your slides if you want.
I can probably, if everyone can hear me fine from here, then I can rattle through. So
I'll move that way.
I run a small product development agency, very small, but we do a lot of work in medtech and healthcare related products and devices, including some startups, but also innovative new products and technologies for larger companies as well. Hence the introduction from Chris Hancock that started all of this off. A lot of what we do ends up creating patents, and it's that sort of development and design work that we do. It's finding difficult problems, finding solutions, and then getting past those initial really difficult, will it work at all questions as quickly as possible. And I think that's where we've got sort of a good fit with this approach with Keep Me Breathing. Those early discussions, what we're talking about is, an end goal that's incredibly ambitious. A closed-loop feedback system, implantable, essentially something that works like a pacemaker. And so, in order to do that quickly, in order to do that without, going to the top of the scale on timeline and cost, you have to be looking at what already exists. How do we, just like with the drugs, you're trying to find something that's already been created for another condition and repurpose it in one way or another, which is all fine and good. But what we found was that the gaping hole in this system was on-the-go, portable, wearable monitoring of blood CO2. So that's where our more recent focus has been. And because there was nothing in the way of existing products, but what James actually hit upon first was some very early academic research making use of...
Very good research here.
Oh, yeah. I'll explain that in a minute. But there was definitely, on the sort of cutting-edge research side of things, some very interesting first steps of research, looking at use of new technologies that had been created and how they might be used to make low-power, portable, transcutaneous CO2 monitoring. The very first thing we did was we gathered everything that we could find and we just built it. We're going to build it, does it work? And the answer was always, well, no. And that's because there's one thing is doing research and finding something that shows promise, making that into something that's going to deal with all of the horrible practicalities of wearing it on your body and doing all the things you want to do, that's a different question. So we had a lot of failures, a lot of moments where we just thought, well, this actually, we got excited, but then it's not working, it's not working, it's not working. But every time you have a failure, you learn that there's something there that's causing that failure. And so everything we've created on this journey has been about finding those problems and solving them one at a time. And so then we had sort of our initial sort of first really positive result, whereby this dark green line on the top, line at the bottom here, we are monitoring CO2 being given out off of an arm, wired up to a laptop. But after a breathwork exercise to raise CO2, we see this little bump and then a return to the baseline. So that was the first sort of real hint of, wow, we could have something here that's actually pretty interesting, and certainly using a completely different technological approach to the sort of the large hospital-based units which are currently in use. So we quickly moved that mostly to make testing easier. We then moved to a cobbled together, 3D printed, but battery powered and wirelessly connected device that we could then start doing more interesting tests, start to get into less controlled environments, again, constantly pushing the boundaries of, what's the next thing that's going to make this break. And a lot of the development in that part of the journey was about controlling the local environment on the skin and about filtering out all of the things which are basically messing up the reading. In a way, it's almost like trying to hear a really quiet noise in the middle of a music festival. And there's so many things that are interfering with what we're trying to detect coming from the patient's skin that we've had to quickly iterate through a number of different approaches in order to do that. But then, we'd start to get much, much better improved data again. You can see the sort of the ongoing wobbliness and waviness of those two orange and blue lines at the top there indicates all of the interfering noise on our signal that we're getting from movement, from changes in temperature, from changes of the environment of the person wearing the device. But this line at the bottom is showing us being able to filter that out and get to the data we want, which is, again, 2 breathwork exercises and 2 peaks in CO2. There are, of course, this is still just step 5 of however many. There's still a lot more to go, but it's been a tale of sort of ongoing progress and improvement. And what we then moved to was, let's we started to worry, well, wait a minute, how do we really know what we're detecting is really there? So comparison against a capnograph, industry standard for CO2. And here, you can see some of our sort of initial tests where we were doing really intense 1 minute of exercise in order to just very quickly make yourself out of breath. And again, you get this little bump of CO2 off the capnograph. And yeah, Joe Wicks times 100. And again, we're seeing the same bumps appear in our data. One of the things you'll see here that we're still working on is that we have a slight delay in our data compared to what we see on the capnograph. And that is, there's a number of factors there that we're sort of decreasing that as we go. And at this stage, I think that, this conversation started about Vento, which was, well, we've got something here that looks like it might work. Big challenges here are lots and lots of R&D time required, lots of data collection required to test it, improve it, and start to validate it when you start talking about this as a medical device. What if it wasn't a medical device? Well, you could reframe this as a product. You could start looking at non-life critical things such as monitoring performance of a cyclist or a sports person. In that sense, there's, as well as the idea of pitching this and selling it and having sort of income come into from that, there's also the fact that you can start to collect a lot of user data, which if you can build up a large pool of user data in a non-clinical sense, that is a really good first stepping stone before you start entering into clinical and medical research. So this, I've seen the stop signs, so I'm going to very quickly, the last couple of slides. This rapidly developed through to a much more streamlined and more robust version of version.
James here is in the crowd, yes. By the way.
You see where James is. But putting this through its paces, this is at an high altitude training centre in London. So what's really interesting here is we can start to collect lots and lots of data. James is actually wearing 4 sensors here, 2 on his arms and 2 on his back as well, all collecting really valuable data and comparing that to all sorts of other readings that we're able to take in this sort of sports environment, which is helping us build up that case for on-the-go transcutaneous CO2 monitoring.
Shall we see?
Yep, shall we give it a go? Shall I try my one? And we'll go quickly.
So the device actually has its own Wi-Fi hotspot built in. You can scan a QR code and go and see what my CO2 is. Not that any of you would be interested, but as an example. Let's see if we can get it loaded.
So I just put this on before we came down to the stage. So it's our first testing of giving a talk. See what comes up. There we go. So this should show you quite nicely that the device has been turned on and hits a baseline of it being not on the body. And you'll see this green line lines up with the 0 reading here. That red dot is the moment, is the flag on the data of when I put it on my arm. And then you'll see the device is detecting the CO2 coming out of my skin. And coming up after about 15 minutes or so, it's hit this equilibrium point. And so from this point onwards now, it's measuring my blood CO2, which has stayed at a fairly constant rate until I started talking. Then it started to go up a bit.
So it works.
But there we go. And so what we know we can detect now is that, consistently across different users, different environments and so on, we can establish a baseline of CO2 that the body's giving out, and then we can detect peaks and troughs in relation to that. Taking that forward into sort of further accuracy is the next stage of development after that.
And final 10-second thing, the big thing about this for the children who have the condition is if you can identify the trends of CO2 going upwards, you can have this beep to remind them to breathe because they won't do it themselves. So actually this not only affects us long run, this could save somebody's life as soon as they have it on.
Okay.
I'm going to stop you there because I'm
Gonna
worried
pull the
about
plug.
James overheating.
Go on.
I'm watching the temperature go up. A brilliant example of people working together, that resilience, that determination, that fighting through the failures, and hopefully not just creating something that is going to change your family's life, but the lives of many other people, not just with this rare condition. Just before we finish for break, in a sentence or two, what difference has this project working together and the hopeful eventual outcome, what difference does that make to you and your community?
I hope very soon I'll be able to say it changes people's lives by making them healthier and safer every day, because as soon as this is in use, it will do that.
Brilliant. So a round of applause, please, for Duncan and James.